Alright, so in this video we're checking out the Baby Nano V2 from Flywoo. So obviously we have the version 2 of the Baby Nano that came out about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. And you saw those videos on my channel previously. And these were, if you search my channel you can find these. You can see that you got the freestyle frame and the dead cat frame here. And these are both analog on both of those, but now we have digital versions of the Baby Nano. So on the right here we have the analog version. I have the walk snail version here. There's also an HD0 version which they did not send me, but it's probably going to be similar in terms of weight and performance. I believe the walk snail is like 1.5 grams more than the HD0 version, so in terms of performance it's going to be pretty similar because the weight's pretty similar. You get two different frame options. You get the, as you can see, the walk snail here has the dead cat style frame here, where the motors are a little bit further out and back in the front, and then on the freestyle frame is basically like just an X style frame here for the analog. But for each of the different versions, analog, walk snail, or HD0, you can choose a different frame style, either the freestyle frame or the dead cat frame. And it looks like when you get the freestyle frame, you get the 4-bladed propellers, either the gem fan 4-blade, and then the dead cat comes with the 3-bladed gem fan propellers, although I'm pretty sure you can choose different options if you should so desire. And then the flight controller is going to be a little bit different. So the analog version comes with a built-in video transmitter, analog video transmitter of course, and then the receiver here is actually a separate component. That's right there. That's an Express LRS receiver, and this does come in multiple different receiver versions. You get plug and play with no receiver, FreeSky XM Plus, Express LRS, and TBS Crossfire are all the different options available for. So depending on, basically you can pick and choose what you want in terms of the quad. So just because you see a certain configuration here, you can alter it to pretty much however you want. If you want dead cat style frame on analog, you can do that, and if you want a different receiver, Crossfire for example, you can do that of course as well. Of course, you know, those weights are going to be a little bit different, so I can't show you every single iteration out there. There's like say 3, and then there's 2 of each frame. There's probably like 60 or 65 combos out there, so obviously they're not going to send me all those to show each individual weight, but I think if you click on the configuration on the product page, you can get the approximate weight for each receiver version. So while the analog version has the video transmitter on the flight controller, the digital version obviously does not have that because it doesn't need that. So it gets rid of the video transmitter, and instead it has in my case, a built-in Express LRS receiver, and it has this antenna here, right, this T antenna here, and then it plugs into the flight controller, and it is a serial version of the Express LRS receiver, so you can't update that separately from Betaflight versus the SPI receivers, and so that's a good thing. These newer versions of V2s come with the updated motors, so we have these gold and purple 1002 motors, and it doesn't show up here on camera, but they're 19,800 kV for the ones that I've got. They are available in other KVs. On the product page you can go down and buy other motors, but I believe the bind and flies only come with a 19,800 kV. I suppose if you contact them, you can ask them to make a custom version for you, possibly. But yeah, you'll have to contact them and ask them. I don't know the answer to that. But all the bind and flies come with a 19,800 kV. I believe there's like a 23,000 kV version of this motor as well if you want more power and less flight time. So these are new, these little gold and purple 1002 motors in the V2s. The V1s came with the 0802 motor, and these gem fan bi-bladed props and tri-bladed props on the freestyle version. So definitely a little bit more power on the 1002 motor, a little bit more efficient as well. And then the main plate that everything is connected to is a little bit thicker. It's a little bit over 2 millimeters thick on at least the dead cat one's almost like 2.2 or 2.3 millimeters thick. The analog one with a freestyle frame here, this is about 2.1 millimeters thick on my calipers, whereas the older V1s came with like a 1.5 millimeter frame. So it's going to give you a little more durability, but of course it's going to add more weight. The other thing that's new is the battery connector. So previously, I believe mine came with the PH 2.0 connector, and then they later updated this first version to GMB27, and then this one came with the GMB27 connector. So that helps with the voltage sag and gives you a little bit more power and punch outs. But now we have gone to this newer GMB connector. It's called the A30. It looks like this. It is somewhat compatible with BT 2.0. The pins are, but there's a little bit different. It's keyed on one side here. So the batteries, which you have to buy separately. You can buy these. There's a set of 4. There's a 1S450 and a 1S750. Different sizes, and they have these new A30 connectors. They basically look like a BT 2.0 connector, but they have this little key notch here, so the batteries can be used on the pigtails for a BT 2.0 quad. So if you have like a Beta FPV quad that has a BT 2.0 connector, you can plug these batteries in, but not vice versa, because the other side is keyed. The BT 2.0 batteries don't work in the opposite connector. So if you try to use a BT 2.0 battery in this connector here, you can see how it's keyed here, and that will block the battery from plugging in. Now, it can technically, if you force it, it can go in, but then it'll push this little keyed part out on the side. So just something to be aware of. But yeah, technically it can be forced, but I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, this is the connector that they're going to. I think it's because for those of you that are like screaming foul, what about my BT27 batteries or GMB27 batteries? And I guess they gave up on that because not a lot of you guys bought that battery or the connector. So they figured, well, we're going to abandon those people because there's not that many that bought into it. And then they went with this route here with this connector because it's going to be compatible with BT 2.0. At least the batteries will be with the other connector. So if you have the pigtail that has the BT 2.0 pigtail, these batteries will just plug in no problem. And I think that's why they went this route, sort of halfway compatible. And that's why they went with these batteries. And you can buy them in a pack of 4 each. The batteries themselves, obviously, they're different weights and sizes, so some feet are a little bit longer, they're a bit thicker and fatter, so they have different connectors or different trays. So each of the models come with a different size tray for the battery. So this is the 750 and this is the 450 on here. And all you have to do to get these off of here is I would recommend sticking a battery in here, and then they just twist off. You can twist these, so you just twist it 90 degrees and it'll pop out, and then you can swap the battery if you want to go with the 750 instead. So in terms of flight time, so these are for the 450s, will give you about roughly 3 minutes. It's going to depend a lot on how you're flying. The more aggressively you're flying, you're going to get less flight time. The more you're kind of cruising around and not really aggressive on the throttle, you get more flight time. So it really depends on how you're flying and also how windy it is. And that's going to be a big factor, especially for something this tiny. So about 3 minutes roughly, give or take. And then on the 750, you can probably expect around 5-ish minutes. Obviously, you can push it to 6 if you're just cruising around, and then it's going to be less if you're more aggressive. And then compared to analog versus the digital versions are going to get a little bit less flight time because of the extra weight. Alright, so here's the weight of everything. This is the analog version with the freestyle frame, 28.9, and we'll throw on the 450 1S, and now we're at 41.6. And if we throw on the 750, that takes the weight up to 46. There's the walk snail version with the dead cat style frame, 36 grams. Throw on the 450, and we're going to be at 48.6. And then the 750 takes us up to 53.1. And then here's the weight of the batteries just by themselves. 17 grams for the 750, and then the 450 is about 12.6. So just a quick note on the stuff that you get inside the box. You're going to get a spare set of props. So obviously you get some screws, some extra tape and stuff like that, little spare parts. The Walksnail version is going to come with the USB cable to access the storage just on the actual video transmitter. You do get these prop guards you can throw on here with the longer screws. Of course, that's going to add on more weight and reduce your flight time. Now, of course, if you do opt to get the new batteries, you'll have to get a new charger. So this is just a sort of USB-C 5-volt charger here, and it has the new A30 connectors and pH 2.0 here on the side, and so these work with these batteries perfectly. Now, because this connector is somewhat compatible with BT 2.0 pigtails, you can technically charge this up in one of those beta FPV chargers that has the BT 2.0 connector. I have charged these up in there no problem, because the connector size and the pins are the same size and they will work. Alright, so in terms of how they fly and performance, it's not a lot different than compared to what it was before with the smaller motors. These are a little bit heavier, but you get a little more powerful motor. I think that effect in some sense kind of cancels each other out a little bit. What is, I think, making a bigger difference is the battery connector, especially when moving from the pH 2.0 connector that was on the first one that I had. That one compared to these, especially when you're doing full throttle punch outs, you just don't feel as much of a voltage sag where you have loss of power while you're trying to do certain kinds of tricks. So that does help in terms of performance, but at the same time, you are still limited by the total capacity of the battery, so your flight time is still going to be around that 3-minute mark. It hasn't really increased that much. It's just that you have less of a voltage sag in those punch outs when you're more on the throttle. In terms of the overall noise, it's about the same. In fact, maybe a little less on these newer props. They are really quiet, and so if you can't really hear these more than 10 feet away, it's a very low sort of hum. So if you're looking to fly these at a park and don't want to attract a lot of attention, these are good models to get, and they're just not going to bother anybody unless they're right next to the quad. The PID performance here is okay. It, I think, could be better. I'm not really sure how this can be improved in terms of flying in windy conditions, which is what I flew these in. These are small and light, and they get pushed around. So yeah, I am flying these around in windy conditions, so you are seeing them kind of getting pushed around quite a bit in the wind, and it's unfortunate that's pretty much how it is with these tiny little things that weigh under 100 grams. Wind does have a big effect, and you can't really correct it too much with PIDs. And unfortunately, I couldn't find a quiet or a non-windy day to fly these in. It's been pretty bad weather lately. Every time it's either raining or it's super windy outside. The sun hasn't come out that much lately here. So unfortunately, the only flights that you're going to see here are basically stuff in pretty nasty winds, 15, 20 miles an hour. And yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, but for something this light and small, that's a pretty big deal. Alright, so that's going to cover for this one. Links to everything down in the video description. Got any questions, let me know. Talk to you guys in the next video.